So you cheated on your spouse, and now your spouse knows. You're sorry that you did it in the sense that you want to save the marriage, and you're thinking, what in the world do I do next? Hey, I've been there. Oh, a long time ago. It was back in the 1980s, but I know what that's like. Hi, I'm Dr. Joe Beam with MH International. People call us Marriage Helper. That's what we do. And we have worked with a ton of people where there has been an extramarital affair. Now, basically, there's about 3 different kinds. Just stay with me, and I'm going to show you, or guide you through the process, I should say. So I'm going to guide you through the process of what you do if you want to put your marriage back together. But let me explain something very quickly about the 3 basic kinds of extramarital affairs. One is what's called the high opportunity, low involvement. That's an affair that's primarily sexual. You meet a woman at the bar while you're out on a business meeting. You kind of get attracted to each other, and the next thing you know, you wind up in bed. Maybe not just one night, it might be 2 or 3 nights, if that's how long your convention lasts. And so it's something that you did, not because of the fact that you developed this deep, wonderful relationship with this other person, but because of the fact that there was a high opportunity. Low involvement means you didn't have to give up much to do it. You didn't have to walk off and leave your wife or your husband. You didn't have to end your marriage. You didn't have to do all kinds of things. In other words, this happened here. It's what we used to call the one-night stand. But you understand it can last longer than one night, and it's primarily sexual. And typically people involved in that are not contemplating leaving their marriage. Now, first of all, you need to figure out when I finish these 3 kinds, which kind it was. So that's number 1. The second kind is what we call the ongoing compartmentalized. You say, what in the world is that? That's when you do what I was just describing, but you do it with some regularity. In other words, I worked with a couple about a year or so ago, and they were both very attractive people physically, and he made a lot of money doing what he did, but he also traveled a lot. And because of the fact that he had somewhere along the line started that in these big business meetings, there would almost always be some woman who was attracted to him. They'd wind up drinking together at a bar later and wind up in bed with each other that night, that it became his process. That not with the same woman, but every time he went off to a conference, that happened. Now, when I asked him, didn't you feel that you were cheating on his wife? He said, I didn't think it had anything to do with my marriage at all. This is just what I learned how to do when I was away from home on these conferences. The reason we call it ongoing compartmentalized is this. Compartmentalized is when you have 2 thoughts that are in contradiction to each other, but you don't let them touch each other. So, for example, one thought is, I'm going to have fun sexually tonight with a stranger. It's going to be a thrill because it's all new. His other thought was, I love my wife. I do not want to lose my marriage. I want to be married to her until the day I die. You do understand those are 2 completely contradictory thoughts. Compartmentalized thinking means I keep those things apart. I don't let them ever touch each other. And so there are some people with ongoing compartmentalized, like, okay, it's just standard. If I'm going to be at one of these conventions, I'm going to sleep with somebody. And it's not necessarily something that applies just to men. It can be business women who just do the very same thing. Or sometimes it can be, well, when I go to that particular convention once a year, that's when I meet my partner there. And so we'll spend that whole convention living as if we're husband and wife. We'll stay in the same room, share all the same meals, et cetera, and then we'll have no contact with each other until next year when we come back. There's no emails, no texts, no phone calls. And that's another version of the ongoing compartmentalized. I don't think of it as being destructive to my marriage because it only happens once a year and we don't really do anything with each other the rest of the year. You might be saying, Dr. Beam, you're making that up. Actually, back in the days when I was doing work for corporate America, I remember it was a convention I did for a company, and the next year I did the same convention for the same company. And I happened to mention how happy that couple looked. I said, I saw them together last year. I see them together this year. They must have a wonderful marriage. And that's when they told me they're not married. As a matter of fact, well, they are, but they're not married to each other. And they just do this when they come here once a year. It's just their thing. And that's what they do. So yes, I know it's true. I have witnessed it myself. I have met the people who are involved in those kinds of things. And so we have the high opportunity, low involvement. We have the compartmentalized where this doesn't really affect my marriage. Now, The third one has to do with a relationship. We talk about it as being a limerent affair, but at least let's call it a relationship affair. And that's when I didn't intend at the outset for this to be sexual. But we had some mutual attraction to each other, and over time we talked to each other. And as we talked to each other over time, sometimes we talked about things that maybe wouldn't have been the wisest things to talk about. I don't mean about sex. I mean about dreams, desires, wishes, fears, the difficulties we've had in life. In other words, just revealing your heart to the other person. And if that's being reciprocal, each one is doing that over time, they develop an emotional bond that's extremely strong. It almost always leads to sex. Now, if it doesn't, that's what people refer to as an emotional affair. But it almost always leads to sex. Now, that one of the three is the most difficult to get a person past. So here's the question. Based on my quick descriptors of those three different kinds of affairs, which one was yours? If you're thinking, I'm not sure. I went to see this prostitute. Okay, that'd be a high opportunity, low involvement. Oh, okay. Well, I kind of got used to the fact that and when this compartmentalized, I remember one guy saying, it was ongoing, but it wasn't an affair. And I said, really? He said, yeah, she just did oral sex on me. And because of that, it wasn't really sex because it wasn't intercourse. Well, let's compartmentalize. He's keeping the thoughts apart from each other. Of course, it's unfaithfulness if somebody's doing oral sex on you. But he compartmentalized that, and it was ongoing for a while. So you see, you can finally figure out which one it is. And if it's that third one, you pretty much know it. It's a very strong emotional relationship. Now, it might be in that third one that you're strongly emotionally connected to the other person, and he or she's not that strongly connected to you, but they enjoy being with you. Or it may be, well, you understand, it can be both of you feeling that way toward each other, or either one of you feeling that way toward the other one, and it's not being reciprocated. Now, if it's the first two kinds of affairs, it's going to be easier to get past than the third. Now, don't misunderstand. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. But I'm saying of those two, it's a little easier than with the third. Now, if you have committed this kind of affair, people often will ask me the question, should I tell my wife, should I tell my husband about this thing I've done? And I always ask these questions in response. Number one, is there any other way they can find out? Well, I don't think so. If there's a possibility they can find out some other way, I would strongly recommend that you tell them. Because as much as it will hurt to hear from you, it's going to hurt a whole lot more to hear from somebody else. And so I always ask them, is that possibility existing? Yeah, well, then I would suggest that you confess. The second question would be, is there anything that you hold back from your spouse because of the fact that you have done this thing? Like you can't be as close to them. You kind of pull yourself away because of the guilt that you feel, that kind of thing. Even if your spouse doesn't know about it, if you say, yes, I can't be as close as I want to be because of the fact that I just can't be because I feel this guilt, this hypocrisy, whatever it might be, I would say, if that's the case, you need to tell your spouse because they know they're not getting what they deserve. They know that something's wrong. In my opinion, they deserve to know why. Now, it's your decision, of course. And the other is, have they ever asked? If they ask and you lied, you really need to go tell the truth. Because you see, when there's a lie out there, you never know when it's going to come back and bite you in the butt. Did you hear that? If there's a lie out there, it may come back in a month, it may come back in a year, it may come back in a decade. If you watch anything about politics in America, it may come back 30, 40 years later. When there's a lie on the table, you've got a liability. When you tell the truth, at least you're facing it and it can't hurt you by hiding out there somewhere. And you say, okay, then if I'm going to tell my spouse, how do I do it? Not bluntly, but straightforwardly enough that it doesn't appear that you're going to justify yourself. Make sure it's an environment where it's just the two of you. Don't do this in a restaurant at a table. Don't do that. Make sure it's a time when the kids are in bed. If you have children, make sure that nobody else can hear, that the telephones are off, that the TV's off. Maybe sit out on the balcony or the patio or the front porch or whatever you have when it's just the two of you together. And then you look your spouse in the eye and you're going to say, this is going to kill me and I know it's going to hurt you, but I need to tell you something. In other words, you give it some kind of a preface, but you don't make it lighthearted. It's like, this is going to be hurtful, but I need to tell you. Now, when you tell your spouse, do not, in any shape, fashion, or form, try to make it sound like it's not your fault. Well, like, if you'd been there for me and been the lover you should have been, then that, if you say that, it just makes it appear you're telling your wife or your husband, it's your fault. It's your fault I did that because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. At this point, you don't want to blame anybody else. You don't want to say, well, Paul's always been kind of a wild friend, and you've told me I shouldn't hang out with him. And sure enough, I go with Paul, and Paul, you'll make it sound like it's not your fault, it's Paul's fault. You say, well, Paul may have some fault in it. He may. But this is not the time to discuss that. You see, nobody wants to hear you say you've done something painful, hurtful to them, and then appear not to take full responsibility for it. So you take full responsibility for it. If there comes a time later when you can explain more about the details and circumstances, that's okay, but not now. Right now, it's, I'm taking full responsibilities for my actions. And my suggestion is, don't use wimpy words like, well, I made a mistake. You didn't make a mistake. A mistake, you hit the wrong key on the keyboard. That's a mistake. You didn't trip and fall on that person. It's not a mistake. It was a decision. So in my opinion, mistake is a wimpy word. I would never say I made a mistake. What I would say is, I did wrong. And if you knew better, I'd say that too. I knew better. But I let my own lust become much too powerful. So you take full responsibility. And I don't even use the word apologize because for me, that's still a wimpy word. I'm not going to say I apologize. I'm going to look them in the eye and say, I am so very sorry. Can you find it in your heart to forgive me? Now, you understand that when they first hear that, you're going to get different reactions from different people. It's based on the personality your spouse has, it's based on the experiences he or she has had from childhood up, including previous marriages, but very much into childhood. Some of them will go very quiet and say very little. Some of them will explode like a hand grenade just went off and call you all kinds of names, and the neighbors will begin to enjoy some of the fight. And it's going to be anywhere between. So it might be the very quiet, it might be the explosion, it might be something in between. But what you do, no matter how they respond, you don't run away. You don't blame it on anybody else. You don't say, well, I just thought you might ought to go. No, I'm going to go now. You stay there with them. Now, they're going to have a lot of questions. Here are 2 suggestions about how to answer the questions. Number 1, as you answer the questions, be careful in the sense that whatever you tell your spouse, you can't take back. And so what I did with Alice all those years ago, and we've taught many people to do since then, and it works well, is, are you sure you want to know the answer to that question? And sometimes they'll say yes. Okay. Sometimes they'll say, not right now, but if I ever want the answer, yes, I'll tell you the answer to that. Sometimes people think, well, I have to keep the name of the affair partner secret because this is going to open up a whole big can of worms, not just worms or rattlesnakes. I can't tell who the affair partner is because then everything is going to be, listen, if you've had an affair and your spouse said, who was it? If you don't tell them, so let's say you tell your wife, I had an affair. Who was it? Well, I can't tell you. Do you realize how unfair that is to your wife? Because now every woman in your world becomes suspect. And that's not fair to your wife. Or if you say to your husband, I had an affair, and he said, who was he? And you say, well, I just can't tell you that. Can you see how unfair that is to him? Because now every man in your world becomes suspect. That's not fair. And if you want to get past this, if you want to save the marriage, you better be ready to tell who it was. Now, again, with questions, I would suggest, do you really want to know the answer to that? And here's one other thing. If they ask you for a visual, like did you kiss her or kiss him? I would recommend that you say, I really don't want to relive those things in my mind. Please allow me not to do that. And once we get some help with this, and you have specific questions like that, let's have the coach, the counselor, whomever it might be, let's let that person guide us through there. But for right now, just accept the fact that I'm being open and honest, that I've told you this painful information, but please don't make me relive that by seeing it in my mind or putting it into your mind for you to see. Because once you tell them, yeah, I kissed that woman or I kissed that man, they're going to get a mental picture of that. And long after you're past, long after you're healed, they're still going to be thinking that, seeing that picture. So ask not to do that. You say, okay, Dr. Beam, well, you'll give me 15 minutes worth of information about how to do this, what not to do, what to do. Does that fix everything? No. But it's a good start. Now, we'd love to help you fix it. Because if you say, okay, she forgave me, we're just going to go on like nothing happened. Look, there's trauma there. There's emotional damage inside of you. There's emotional damage inside of your spouse. Now, if you just grin and bear it, okay, we're forgiving people, we're gracious people, we're just going to forgive each other and move on from here. That trauma hiding down deep inside you, that pain, that hurt, is not going to just dissipate on its own. It's going to find some way to come out, and almost always, it's going to be ugly. So I would recommend right then, let's find some people to help us. Now, if your spouse is saying, I think I'm going to divorce you, I understand. I do understand. But can we see if we can just heal the relationship before you do, so that if you divorce me, at least both of us can go on with our lives, particularly you, because I've hurt you. So I understand your desire to divorce me. Don't defend yourself when it comes to that. Don't try to talk him or her out of that. Just say, I understand. But can we please get some help to at least understand what happened and how to get past it first? And you say, well, with whom? Of course, there's a ton of marriage counselors out there, those kinds of things. We would recommend that you give us a shot. You say, why is that? Well, because we're doggone good at this. You say, why? We've had thousands of people we've worked with over the last 30 years. 67% of those marriages were affected by an extramarital affair. And we have a lot of experience. And we know how to help people without beating anybody up verbally and without excusing anybody for what they did. Not to do that either, but to help you see the reality of how it happened, how to heal the relationship, and even help you figure out, you have to make the decision, not us, but even figure out if you want to divorce and move on. Now, like I said, we're really good at that. You take pride in that? Yes and no. Yes, in that we love helping people, so yes, but no in the sense of we wish nobody ever got hurt, ever. But it happens. So you're not going to gain any ground by feeling sorry for yourself, by beating yourself up, but by trying to punish yourself. Confess to your spouse in the manner that we've talked about, and then please call us. As a matter of fact, you might want to call us first. If you go to Marriage Helper, that's marriagehelper.com/book now, you can talk to one of our advisors, and he or she will listen to your story. Now, they're not counselors, they're not therapists, they're advisors. And if there are specific things we have that we can help you with in your specific situation, they'll tell you what they are. If we don't have anything, they'll tell you that too. They're honest people. We operate by integrity. But you might want to even call before you tell, unless you've told already, of course. But give us a call. We really want to help. Please allow us to.